This is AMBAZONIA calling. News, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorial. AMBAZONIA calling is a co-production of Africa Freedom Network, the Mission's Tribune, and the Compass Free Press. Welcome. My name is Ntumpoin Bo Herbert, and I bring revolutionary greetings from Washington, D.C. to all of you fellow Ambazonians on Ground Zero and across the globe. This is edition 00 of AMBAZONIA Calling. You must be asking, why AMBAZONIA Calling? The short reply is, it's all about the spirit. The Ambazonian spirit. The Ambazonian spirit has always been around. That spirit has survived under the many slave names our people have been forced to bear. Anglo-fools, Anglos, Biafrans, from the misrepresentations of our homeland as West Cameroon, Northwest, Southwest, from the confusion of calling us a state, then 2 provinces, then 2 regions. Whatever the colonizer has done, that spirit has survived the 57 years of our desert crossing from the house of exile in Cameroon to the beautiful Ambazonia, land of freedom, that no one, no matter their might, shall take from us. In the same way that miracles are worked in the name of God, the Ambazonian spirit has fought for everything we hold dear. Empowered by that spirit, our people conquered the attacks aimed at destroying the GC, our legal and educational system, paying in blood whenever required. It is that spirit that forced the colonizers to capitulate when they decreed the University of Boya. It is that spirit that roars through Ambazonia today, crying out for unfettered freedom and outright independence and separation from Egypt. More than any other program on the air during Ambazonia's domination and humiliation by Cameroon, one radio program rallied Ambazonians on Sunday mornings. Our people skipped Sunday Mass or Sunday morning worship in order to listen to that one program, one that recognized their yearnings, their desires, their aspirations, that kept hope alive and held out the promise that an Ambazonian dawn was not only possible, but was about to break. The colonizer has kept a whitewash version, an Okrika version, that insults the brave, courageous spirit of Ambazonia. It was at moments of great threat to the survival of our people that bold voices on old-time radio spoke up from the dungeons of La République to give our people hope. At a time when the colonizers borrow from the lingo of the genocidaires in Rwanda by calling our people rats, dogs, roaches, and treating them worse than animals, at a time when their publicly expressed desire is to exterminate those they call the enemies within, Ambazonia Calling is born not for the fun of radio. We are here to give voice to our people anew and to help sustain their hope. A time will come when our people would have fled the carnage in Egypt, when we will provide entertainment. For now, our duty at Ambazonia Calling is to be the voice of Ambazonia. We are here to celebrate Ambazonia, to keep the good old Ambazonian spirit alive, of one for all and all for one. Let us begin this inaugural edition from Wales, Ground Zero, where the genocidal violence of colonial Cameroon and its occupation forces in Ambazonia continue to massacre our people. In village after village, hamlet after another, county and state, the wailing of the aggrieved fills the air, as in this audio from Menka Tinin. Here is Ambazonia Calling's Innocentia, with a wrap-up of the latest events from the homeland.
Gunfire lasting several hours on the outskirts of Kumba, the economic heartbeat of Meme in the southwest zone of AMBAZONIA, reportedly resulted in 3 civilian deaths. But sources say it was a summary execution after the fact on Thursday, June 7th by a frustrated La République du Cameroun army following the disappearance of the Amba boys back into the bushes. Kumba comes on the heels of the burning of houses, compounds, cars, and motorcycles by same forces of La République du Cameroun in Bobong and Wombong, both villages in Com. Sources on ground zero say forces of La République du Cameroun have been hijacking and using personal vehicles to disguise and travel through hostile terrain without raising alarm bells. According to an intercepted communication from the Colonial Senior Divisional Officer for Momo, Mr. Monono, to his hierarchy including the Colonial Governor, Lili Larfrik of the Northwest Zone, soldiers have run out of ammunition and are defecting their posts. His plea for reinforcement speaks volumes about Amba boys gaining, even if not holding grounds, as the days become weeks and weeks grow into months, not only of fighting, but of radicalization and recruiting for Amba forces. In a video that has looped social media and has been watched several thousand times since its release a couple days ago, an auto-proclaimed General Ivo and a ragtag of undisguised armed men display automatic rifles, pledging on behalf of the ADF and the struggle to fight to the last for the liberation of AMBAZONIA. But just as brazen was the splatter on social media of pictures of the army of La République du Cameroun distributing money in some communities in AMBAZONIA. Pro-independence activists had long labeled the said money as spoiled money, with powers to allegedly cause irreparable harm to recipients, including blindness or even death. In one such picture gone viral, a reverend sister in Lebialem in the southern zone displays 2 million label on the brown envelope she is holding. It would be recalled that Lebialem has recorded the highest number of internally displaced persons since the revolution broke out late in 2016, especially after the declaration of independence on October 1st, 2017. According to extremely conservative UN figures, there are 160,000 internally displaced persons from AMBAZONIA, with 135,000 from Meme Division, 15,000 from Manu, 3,000 from Boyo, 3,000 from Momo, and another 4,000 from Goketungia. But those figures, including the number of 50,000 refugees that have fled to neighboring Nigeria, shrink and collapse even before anecdotal evidence. On Equinox TV, for instance, an activist for an organization known as Mothers for Cameroon reported that on a recent visit of Iwo village in Momo Division, she found the village deserted, but for a few elderly women that had no strength to run out or where else to go. They had banded and locked themselves somewhere relatively safe. Reliable sources say Bello in Com, northern zone is like the wild, wild west. This town of over 100,000 inhabitants now counts less than a handful, as populations flee from the scorched earth modus operandi of Biya forces, a reminder of how French forces razed down Bamileke villages in the 60s. So far, 75 villages have been burned down, including Kwakwa, Kembong, Banga Makundu, Bafia Moyuka, Tombel, Bokova, and Bitungi in the southern zone, and Jikwa, Nguzang, Widikum, and Com in the northern zone. Life is far from ever getting back to normal in Kumbo, Bamenda, Bali, or Menka around Santa, where La République du Cameroun allegedly framed and executed in cold blood over 35 young men and women that it called terrorists. Life is far from ever returning to normal in Boya, Kumba, Manfe, and other cities in the southern zone. We readily understand the import of another intercepted circular dated June 4th, 2018 from the colonial governor Okalia of the Southern Zone, in which he calls for the intensification of mixed patrols at the multiple checkpoints that are now a part of the landscape in Ambazonia. If nothing, the take-home is that Ambazonia ragtag forces are making the cost of colonization much more expensive for the colonizers than at any time in the history of the land and the people. And according to some sources, the Amber Boys are only getting started. Sources say the plan is to get major cities involved very soon because the burden cannot be that of the villages alone. Innocent Chia.
The problems in Cameroon, the problem we have in West Cameroon, is the problem that will bring down Cameroon. If you do not handle it well, you will not know Cameroon as it is in a few months or in a few years. When people have had pent-up anger and pain, humiliation, for over 50 years, when it bursts out, you will never be able to control it. And I told him, and simply what he asked me was, qu'est-ce que vous allez faire? Because you have your army of occupation out in West Cameroon, you believe that when the people will rise, even if you took the whole of the French army and added to yours, you will never bring them down.
One of the videos that went viral this week was that of the colonial police superintendent based in Fundong, Boyo State in Ambazonia's northern zone. Speaking supposedly as a hostage of Amba fighters, the colonial superintendent of police makes a confession that very few picked up. He admitted that part of the genocidal plan put in place by the regime of Mr. Biya and implemented by occupation forces all across Ambazonia is not only to abduct and massacre our people. The hostage says that the instructions they have received include to slaughter people and throw their mortal remains into rivers in order to avoid those mortal remains from being identified by their loved ones. This is exactly what was happening during the genocide in Rwanda, when Hutu extremists said they were killing and sending Tutsis up the Nile River. Listen to the superintendent of police speaking in enemy language. I want to say that I'm doing well. No one has molested or beaten me. They have fed me. They have given me something to drink. I want to say to the government that what they are doing is not good. They abduct people, kill them, and throw their mortal remains into the rivers so that they cannot be identified. It is not good. I would like the government to do something. We learned this week that Ambazonians held in deportation prisons in La République du Cameroun continue to be targeted for assassination. It is a shame what the superintendent of police and Kondengi prison is doing. Justice will have to be done for Matthias, like Pa Frederick Uwirsi, a brave soldier of the Ambazonian Revolution who died last Friday in Kondengi after being unjustifiably abducted from Kumbo in the northern zone and deported to Yaoundé on 22nd September 2017. The cause of death, according to our sources, is torture, mental, physical, and psychological, and the lack of access to medical attention. May his soul and the souls of all martyrs of the Ambazonian struggle rest in perfect peace. If anyone was looking to provide an award for the silliest sycophants of this month, that award would no doubt go to two surrogates of the Biya regime. Bandakani would be one. This week he issued death threats against the U.S. ambassador to Cameroon should he return to the country. I tell you, he will go back in a coffin. I want to be crystal clear about that. The runner-up for the trophy of a sycophant of the week, silliest sycophant of the week, or should I say the Nyamfuka of the week, would be none other than Masanga Nyamdi, who passes for a university professor. Like every colonialist, Nyamdi behaves like a slave master, treating other human beings as less human. This week, Nyamdi said Ambazonians are an ungrateful bunch who only get into institutions of higher learning thanks to the kindness and magnanimity shown them by the God of Ituri, Paul Biya himself. Otherwise, the only intelligent Cameroonians, he says, are the Betis, the tribe apparently chosen by God to misrule Cameroon, along with the Basas, the tribespeople of the Yamhead Nyamdik, and to some extent the Bamileke people. This would be the three peoples of the Cameroons who could make a pass mark, according to Nyamdik. But the best answer by far to this Nyamfuka professor was provided by Barrister Agbonkon, President of the Fako Lawyers Association and Vice President of the African Bar Association in charge of Central Africa, when he cited a real professor of university, Bate Bisson, describing political prostitutes like Nyamdik in using half-baked education to rubbish others.
I've said in many occasions that the arrogance, the disdain, and the disrespect that the Francophones show to the Anglophones in this country is something that is fueling the anger of the people of the Southern Cameroons. How do you imagine that somebody who is supposedly learned would say that Anglophones are not intelligent people? It is shocking. It is stunning, you know. And if we were in a proper setup, that professor would be sanctioned, because that is hate speech. That is an insult to the 8 million Southern Cameroonians in this country. It is unfortunate for Professor Nyamdi to say such a thing. It is unfortunate for him to make such a statement. I mean, these are the kind of professors that Bate Bisson would describe as kabu professors with okrika degrees. You know, we know he's an apologist of the party, of the ruling party, and a man Friday of the president of the republic, because he always praises him on TV.
This is Ambazonia calling. Fighters of the Ambazonian Defense Forces posted a video this week in which they bragged about their growing presence across Ambazonia. According to General Ivo, who says he wears his title like a mantle, Ambazonian fighters share a slogan with the cell phone provider MTN. They are everywhere you go.
Like MTN, Red Dragons, Tigers, etc., are present everywhere you go to. Beware, be warned, don't fall a victim. All for one.
One for all.
One for all.
All for one.
A lot has been said recently of the United Nations declaring Ambazonia a humanitarian emergency. What does that mean, to be declared a humanitarian crisis? We ask our own Barrister Siambe to dig into and provide our listeners some answers. Here's our report.
The United Nations recently acknowledged that there is indeed a humanitarian crisis in Cameroon. This, however, begs the question as to what exactly such an acknowledgement means to the people of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia, who constitute the population affected by such crisis. According to a credible source at the United Nations, this acknowledgement is merely an initiative by UN humanitarian and other agencies to raise funds to assist those in need. However, given that such need has not been acknowledged by the government of Cameroon, even if funds were raised, they would probably never get to the suffering people of Ambazonia. What, therefore, are the chances of the government of Cameroon recognizing and accepting the existence of a humanitarian crisis? Absolutely zero. They are the perpetrators of the genocidal carnage that has led to the humanitarian crisis that has been acknowledged by the United Nations. They are the ones burning down villages and leaving for toast the bodies of grandparents unable to escape from their burning homes. They are the ones slaughtering dozens of young, defenseless Ambazonians, shooting at hospitals and pulling out wounded people to be executed in cold blood, beheading, maiming, raping, and dehumanizing Ambazonians in every way possible. Truth be told, that we at Ambazonia Calling were surprised when the United Nations finally made a statement on the ongoing horrific events and atrocity crimes being perpetrated in Ambazonia, given that although this sovereign territory has been in a quagmire for several years, not once has the United Nations acknowledged the crisis. Instead, some of its officials prefer to wine and dine with the oppressor, the colonizer, and accept gifts from them. The UN spokesperson of French origin and most likely working hand in hand with the government of Cameroon and France, has been known to giggle, choke with laughter, and mock a journalist of good conscience who tried to pose tough questions about the ongoing crisis. The spokesperson has also been known to walk off podiums at press conferences, leaving journalists in mid-sentence. In the face of a recent massacre of Ambazonians by the forces of Cameroon in the northwest region town of Menkapinin, the UN has claimed that it could not authenticate pictures or videos of the massacre, whereas it frequently and effortlessly authenticates pictures and videos of similar massacres in Palestine and other parts of the world. This blindness, deafness, and inertia of the United Nations leads to the rational conclusion that the United Nations, its Security Council, and humanitarian agencies could very well be in a nefarious conspiracy with Cameroon and France to see the demise of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia. However, even in the midst of such bleakness, there is hope. We at Ambazonia Calling hope that the United States succeeds to impose its plan to gain direct access to those affected by the humanitarian crisis and to get much needed relief to them, even as others continue to pursue the quest for the complete and total independence of southern Cameroon's Ambazonia.
This is Ambazonia Calling. One of the chief collaborators of the colonialists in Yaoundé, Peter Mafani Musonge, has been sent to Ambaland in the desperate hope that there are still Ambalanders who believe in the one and indivisible whatever. Kolabo Musonge got an earful during the first meeting he organized in Bemenda, chief town of Ambazonia's northern zone. Known until now for his party's support for federalism, Ni John Frundi of the SDF was blunt with Kolabo Musonge, letting it be known that more than 50% of those in attendance, including the SDF chairman himself, would pick up guns and would be gone to the bush to fight for a free Ambazonia if they had weapons.
If we were to send these people out and give them guns, half of this crowd would be in the bush fighting. I'll be one of them. Because we can push the wall.
Frundi explained that the radicalization has been gradual but irreversible.
They started with ordinary stones, graduated to rubber guns, graduated to arrows, and when they pushed them, they had to go into the bush to start seizing guns and doing what they're doing today. The situation, Mr. President, has pushed us into that.
The late Honorable Prime Minister Augustin Gomjoa must be jumping in his grave for joy and pride at hearing his son, Honorable Paulinus Joa, speak up so bravely and intelligently, beginning by reminding the colonialists that today's terrorists, in their eyes, will be heroes tomorrow. He clarified the difference between who is a terrorist and who in Cameroon today is the terrorist.
Mr. Chairman, who is a terrorist? When we get the definition of who a terrorist is, then we will know who the terrorist is. A terrorist, well, ordinarily speaking, I don't need to go to the dictionary, someone who terrorizes others. There are various forms of terrorism in this country. We know today, in actual fact, I was so glad the other day on the 20th of May watching television when I saw sons of terrorists at the Unity Palace. The sons of Umnyobe and NS Wanzi, who yesterday were terrorists by the definition of the government of the day, and who today have been rehabilitated. But what happened to them and to their fathers? They were hanged, beheaded. There was a lot of blood. As we are seeing today, we will call freedom fighters terrorists. But we forget to know that the greatest terrorist today in this country, thank God you said we can say what we said, what we like or what we know without any fear of repression. The greatest terrorist today in this country is the state.
Honorable Joa was not done with explaining how the Biya regime's scorched earth policy contributes to the genocidal violence and carnage, for which he promises the regime and its collaborators will and must be held responsible.
State terrorism is going beyond bounds. It is going beyond bounds. You kill innocent civilians, unarmed civilians. You raise our villages from existence. You sign decrees that people should move out of their homes and go over to where they feel safe. People have to move to the forest. And when people stand up to fight for their rights, to fight for their recognition as citizens of this country, you term them as terrorists. When you term them as terrorists and you send out soldiers with guns behind them, what do you expect? These soldiers are trained to kill. They will kill those innocent people. And they're killing, Mr. Chairman, thank you very much. They're killing because you have sent them out to go and kill. They know how to take instructions. When they take instructions, because you have labeled our children, our brothers, our fathers as terrorists, and then you want to say, oh no, you are not part of that kind of carnage. No, you are. And you will be held squarely responsible for it. I am sorry, those of you, who from far and near think you might not have, or who directly know they have something to do with it, you will have to answer to history.
Honorable Joa spent a few minutes destroying the myth of one and indivisible, sold at gunpoint, letting the colonialists know that no level of savagery and bloodshed will ever be able to break the spirit of Ambalanders.
When you see the Anglophone problem, you must ask yourselves the question, can you really stop it just by maybe this commission coming out? It's a difficult mission. No. The Anglophone problem has to do with a spirit. It is intangible. You cannot see it, you cannot touch it, but the Anglophoneness is there in every Anglophone. With your permission, to my dear brothers and friends, so many of you up here, I know you, but I want to let you know that all the Anglophones up here, sitting on this table, you are with us in spirit. You are with us in spirit. And our Francophone brothers are fully aware of that.
Honorable Joa had advice for collabos like Musonge.
Those of you up there, if it is difficult, if it is impossible for you to achieve this mission, there's one little thing that I grew up learning, enjoying. The spirit of resignation. If it is difficult, we'll call on all of you sitting up here to tender in your resignation from this commission, and you'll be making a major contribution to change in this country. A major contribution. Immeasurable.
Honorable Joa reminded Musonge and the colonialists for whom he works that the leaders of the Ambazonian restoration quest, including notably those they hold in deportation prisons and those they have driven into exile, must be part of any inclusive negotiations. He reminded the regime that they will have to kill every Ambalander before taking over their homeland.
So we are calling on you to give peace a chance. Call that inclusive dialogue. That inclusive dialogue is going to include all of our brothers and sisters who are in the diaspora. Mr. Chairman, the political prisoners, people who have been moved from Boya-Bamenda to super courts in Yaoundé and imprisoned and given long terms of imprisonment. Double standards. But we're talking about vivre ensemble. Double standards. Siseko and Co. I don't know, maybe I'll give you a mission to produce those people. Maybe if you can just show us a photograph of this commission with our leaders from Nigeria. Mr. Chairman, I will give you kati that you love so well. Mr. Chairman, I beg you one more time, let us stop the carnage. The amount of killing that is going on. You will kill to the last Anglophone. You will kill to the last. So the military solution is not the answer.
This is Ambazonia calling. In war, successful commanders build and execute a strategy. They take advantage of the weaknesses of their opponents or enemies. They avoid errors and traps. Our own barrister Manjong Jutambe tells us the 5 traps Ambazonians must absolutely avoid.
The Republic of Cameroon versus Ambazonia is a David versus Goliath fight with a number of obvious and not so obvious traps. First, Ambazonians need to make it clear to everyone that their demand is for the restoration of independence and the reaffirmation of their right to self-determination. The colonialists and their supporters are trying desperately to mislead the world by claiming that the problem is one of economic and political marginalization or one of human rights abuses. Second, as soon as the colonial forces of Mr. Biya and his sponsor France realize that winning the war against Ambazonia is easier said than done, they will try to name our restoration quest terrorists. This was done for Eritrea during its war with Ethiopia. The ANC in South Africa and Nelson Mandela were named terrorists. Mr. Biya's regime is already trying and imprisoning Ambazonians on trumped-up terrorism charges. Ambazonians must be beyond reproach. This is why any cross-border attacks are a no-go. Calls for Francophones to go home or attacks on so-called 11-province citizens are misguided. So too are any retributive killings. Third, Ambazonia have a sacred duty to make sure that the world understands our plight and understand what solutions we consider acceptable. We must be clear to the world that the Republic of Cameroon is a different country from Ambazonia. It is not 2 of 10 regions of the Republic of Cameroon, not any more than Eritrea ever constituted merely the 14th province of Ethiopia. Ambazonians reject federalism of any kind as a lasting solution based on the past. We also reject confederalism based on the failure of the one tried between the Gambia and Senegal. Fourth, there is a pattern to the ongoing war by the colonialists against our people. Their troops have targeted small, rural, desperately poor and lightly populated villages and towns, where the low population density makes it possible for them to run amok. That is why they have targeted small communities like Kembong, Kwakwa, Belo, Menka, Afap, Nguti, Mbonge, Ekondo Titi, etc., but have carefully avoided going into, for what I would call, chop-fire towns like Bamenda, Kumbo, Kumba, Tiko, Mutengene, amongst others. Victory for Ambazonia demands that we mobilize all our people at once and from all communities, just as we did on September 22nd and October 1st. Fifth and lastly, Ambazonians have to avoid the trap of elections and electioneering. Any and all Ambazonians who, for whatever reasons, submit to Yaounde's call for an election should understand that their participation will validate Mr. Biya's re-election. Ambazonians need to focus instead on doing what is required of them for our homeland to be recognized by the international community.
This is Ambazonia calling. The events of the last 2 years in Ambazonia have unfolded at such dizzying speed that it would help to be reminded of the road traveled from the very beginning. And here's our own Jude Ozugen with where we are coming from and where we are going.
Every Ambazonia in today's revolution is riding a wave on the soldiers of supergiants. No individual is more deserving of mention than His Royal Highness Gojidinka. He lit the first spark of the light that is today leading Ambazonia from the depth of colonial darkness into the light of international sovereignty. Von Gojidinka wrote and published the New Social Order in 1984. 2 years earlier, von Gojidinka had obtained a ruling, SCB 2892, of the Bamenda High Court in favor of Ambazonia as the successor state of Southern Cameroon. In 1984, the Biya regime seceded from whatever union they ever wanted to claim existed. Held under house arrest, arraigned on trumped-up charges before a military tribunal, condemned and jailed, the Fon fled into exile, leaving other proponents of the restoration quest like Abel Mokong, Molanjo Litumbe, Augustine Dangam, Justice Ebong, Kevin Gumna, and Professor Carlson Anyangwe to never take their feet off the gas pedal. The gallant efforts were rewarded by Communication 266/2003, filed in 2003, and the 2008 Africa's Commission ruling recognizing Ambazonia as a people different from the people of French-speaking Cameroon. A litany of petitions and memoranda seeking the restoration of Ambazonia have been addressed to the UN, the AU, the Commonwealth, and many governments. These efforts have regrettably been met with a studied silence. On an official visit to the Republic of Cameroon on May 20, 2010, the President of the UN General Assembly, in an act of great symbolism, presented 2 maps, one of the Southern Cameroons and another of the Republic of Cameroon, to Paul Biya of Cameroon. Biya ignored this coded message, but the young took note. From a safe distance, until 2016, a generation led by the likes of Mancho BBC signaled that the old order changed, yielding place to new. Mancho BBC soon became an emblematic embodiment of the quest, renamed the Coffin Revolution. Court-martialed before a military tribunal, his defiance during court hearings has witnessed to the determination of Ambazonians. A roadmap published at the end of 2017 laid out the key steps on Ambazonia Road to Restoration Day, October 1st, and mobilized Ambazonia in an unprecedented manner. The failure to implement certain aspects of the roadmap has most likely harmed the restoration quest, notably by preventing a clearer reading of how many Ambazonians preferred independence over federalism or instance. One thing is certain: support for independence grew steadily in popularity. By October 1st, 2017, it had reached fever pitch. Millions of Ambazonia joined in peaceful street celebrations of the symbolic declaration. In principle, exhausting the roadmap to restoration should have been followed by strategizing on and adopting a new roadmap to recognition. Liberation movements have been split on which strategy will work best, with the self-declared interim government arguing that winning recognition for itself and allegiance from all groups will make recognition for Ambazonia easier. Other groups, like the Ambazonia Recognition and Collaborative Council (ARC), has engaged the international community tirelessly, focusing more on winning recognition for the plight of Ambazonia than pledging allegiance to an interim government. Beyond ARC, as a coalition, and in keeping with the spirit of collaboration adopted at the conference earlier this year, other member organizations of ARC pursue their own agenda, including in the field of diplomacy. The last such move was by SCYL of Dr. Ebenezer Akwanga, which recently engaged the African National Congress on behalf of Ambazonia. Apartheid is not over so long as Ambazonia is not independent, Dr. Akwanga told ASC official during their meeting, one of many to come as Ambazonia seek recognition as Africa's youngest nation.
Letter to Joshua. Dear Joshua, long time no write, no see, no hear, no talk. Geez, so much has happened since last I wrote to you. we were still broadcasting from the radio house at Longkak. That was when we could still write letters. I hear that the young people today prefer emails. They would rather WhatsApp, Snapchat. I don't know what you do. But here's an old-fashioned letter back to Joshua. I miss those good old days. Censorship was still alive then, but we knew how to get around it. Social media was limited to the conversation you could have over a beer in the neighborhood bar, in the chicken parlor, or over a bottle of some great kwacha. Those were the days when the mere mention of the name Jean Fauchivet gave so many people a heart attack. Ni John Frundi was still threatening to form the SDF, or whatever that his party is called. Did I hear that you have now done so much rapprochement with Frundi that his SDF now holds his own convention in the same hall as the Chop People Their Money Party? And what is this I hear about you throwing your entire cabinet in prison? Prime Minister Inoni, Secretary General Marafa, your private doctor Tito Sejoa, your ex-propaganda chiefs Mendoze and Amadou Vamuke, everybody is in jail. At this rate, those who think that all 40 thieves are already in jail, except for Ali Baba himself, must be right. Think of it. Even Amadou Ahijo, who gave you power on a platter of gold, would have been locked up if he had committed the error of surviving death during exile in Dakar, Senegal. It will not make everyone proud, but I know that you will feel good to hear that jailbirds like Issa Chiroma, Paula Tanganji, have fully benefited from the time they spent in jail. Thanks to the evil they learned there, they would now even kill their grandmother in order to keep their positions in your cabinet. They are apparently sworn to the same loyalty as Jacques Famendongo, who calls himself one of your creations. That was the problem with the Bishop of Bafiano, who was assassinated and made to look like he had drowned. You have to be the Biya regime to drown fish. It takes that same level of stupidity for you and members of your regime to believe that you can drown Ambazonia too. You do not drown a spirit. You cannot kill an idea with bullets. There will never be blood in rivers big enough to drown all 8 million Ambazonians. It is over, Joshua. Your time is up. Ambazonia has come of age. Freedom is coming, and there is nothing you can do about it. Insisting to hold BBC Mancho, Senator Penn Terence, Siseko Ayuktabe, his aides, and other Ambazonian leaders in dungeons and colonial deportation prisons cannot prevent Ambazonia's march to international sovereignty. It would be easier to prevent the sun from rising than to hope to stop the rise of Ambazonia. Sorry, Joshua. I hear you are still worshipped as the god of La République. Ambazonians do not kiss up anymore. Whenever you insist that Cameroon is one and indivisible, please remember that Ambazonia too is one and indivisible. Tell your master in France that the game is up. Ambazonians have called your bluff. And as your people would say, Allez-y. And this was our edition 00 of Ambazonia Calling, providing you news, analysis, commentary, opinion, editorials. This came to you from the Africa Freedom Network, Missions Tribune, and the Compass Free Press. We've got another edition lined up for you next Sunday. Please stay tuned. Our music today was from Ajwa Alemanji of Ajam Incorporated, Ketron in the United States of A.